Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we're going to share demonic encounter horror stories. First story, a paranormal experience in Bangkok. This story takes place one summer in Bangkok, Thailand, about 3 weeks after I arrived as a participant in an international exchange program. It is ultimately about respect for other cultures and some lessons you only learn the hard way. My name is Anna, and along with 19 others from all over Southeast Asia, I was enrolled in a university right beside the Chao Phraya River. But it was the week of the Buddhist New Year, or Songkran, so no classes are being held. Most of the students living in our dormitory on Bor-Merchikkanani Road, Tailing Chan District, had gone back to their respective provinces for the holidays. At 20 minutes past midnight, when my Indonesian roommate Widya had already fallen asleep, I heard frantic knocking on our door. I was already lying down on my bed, and it was relatively late, so I was mildly annoyed. I thought it was one of the other girls on the floor. Perhaps they had run out of toothpaste. There were about a dozen loud and heavy knocks that should have woken everyone on that floor because the walls were so thin. Beside our door was a frosted glass panel, and I saw a silhouette. Someone was crouching there. It did not register to me as odd at the time. I approached, placed my right hand on the locked doorknob, and asked, "Who is it?" A woman started speaking in rapid, excited Thai, but the strange thing was that the sound was not coming from behind the door. It was coming from behind me, above me, from my left and right, from everywhere at once. After about 3 sentences, she stopped, and the silhouette vanished. It was the kind of dormitory corridor where all footsteps echoed, but this time I did not hear anyone walking away. I was rooted to the spot, afraid to turn around, but afraid of lingering near the door as well. Somehow I knew that what spoke to me was not human, or was no longer human, and I always assumed that if this ever happened, I would fall to the floor in a dead faint. But I didn't. I turned around and went back to bed. I didn't speak Thai. I wasn't sure if that made the situation better or worse. I thought of waking Widya up, but I was also afraid of looking silly. I don't know how I did it, but I managed to fall asleep. I woke up before Widya did the next morning, which was a miracle because she usually woke up first for her morning prayers. She was surprised to see me sitting up, and my facial expression must have told her that something wasn't quite right. I told her what happened. After giving me a very nervous look, she assumed her position on her mat, facing the east, and started praying. I woke up the other girls on the floor, gathered them in the corridor, and told them the same story. I remember that the other girls from the Philippines were spooked, as was Buffa, the only girl from Cambodia. The Vietnamese were a little calmer about it. The eldest girl, Dao from Laos, was visiting her sister who lived near Chulalongkorn, which was unfortunate because she seemed like the type who would have her wits about her at a time like this. She once told us that her home was haunted by spirits who shook her bed at night. The boys in the program didn't comment much, although one suggested placing a Buddha image in our room. The Vin from Laos taught me how to properly pay my respects to the Buddha image at the entrance of the dormitory with a full Buddhist bow, which I have since perfected. After dinner, Widya went to our room to attend to her evening prayers and thesis, while I stayed in the lobby with the others. About an hour later, she appeared in a blaze of panic. "Anna! Anna! Anna!" She ran right into me, and I hugged her, asking, "What happened? What's going on?" She said that she had fallen asleep, but she woke up because someone was whispering in her ear in rapid Thai, and she saw a long lock of white hair across her chest. She said she couldn't move at first, but when the whispering stopped, she was able to get up and run downstairs. Predictably, we were very alarmed at this point. I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't practicing anymore. The others who were tried to rebuke the spirit. The Vin, who could understand Thai, started talking to the few Thai students who were also in the lobby. The strange thing was that none of them were surprised. They told me, in English, that if the woman had white hair and was visiting us, then she was the building's spirit guard, or Chow Ti. They said that they've all seen her before at one point or another. They also called my attention to strips of colorful cloth tied around a beam of wood at the opposite restaurant, and said that those were for the Chow Ti that lived on that piece of land. I've been seeing those strips of cloth all over Tailing Chan, but I never bothered to ask what they were for. Things were starting to make sense, but I was still wondering why, of all the occupied rooms on that floor, she was frequenting ours. "Did you ask permission to stay?" a Thai student asked. What permission?" I said. "Permission from Chow Ti. We always ask permission before staying." I felt ashamed for not knowing this, and I was so sorry for being disrespectful of the spirits. It turned out that for all the other rooms, at least one of them asked for permission to stay. It just so happened that they placed one Filipino and one Indonesian who didn't know about the practice in the same room. The others knew about it because they grew up in Buddhist societies where this is common. The Thai students assured us that she meant no harm. If anything, she was trying to welcome us. Widya and I mustered all our courage, marched right back up to our room, and asked the Chow Ti to grant us permission to stay. We spoke in our native languages, hoping that the sentiments will somehow transcend the language barrier. The Chow Ti didn't appear to either of us or to any of the girls on that floor again for the rest of our stay. We remembered to thank her profusely when we left, and I've asked for permission to stay in every room I've slept in ever since. Second story, the Jefferson Hotel. In 2001, I was big into ghost hunting. I was looking online for a haunted weekend road trip destination and came across the Jefferson Hotel in Jefferson, Texas. About the only thing it said was that room 19 was uninhabitable. Now that really piqued my interest, so I called them up and asked if that was true. She laughed and said no. We booked that room all the time, so I reserved it. I was so excited, but didn't really think anything would happen. I've been to several supposed haunted hotels and B&Bs and nothing. Now, I'm not sensitive like some people. I always hear people say, "I felt like someone was watching me." I have no idea what that means. The only thing I noticed when I walked in a room was a faint, musky smell of an old-fashioned perfume. I set up a recorder in the room and headed out to explore the town. It was like going back in time. If you live in Texas and are looking for a road trip, I highly recommend Jefferson. When I got back to the room, I turned off the recorder and looked out its one window to see a large bust of Thomas Jefferson in the courtyard. I then sat on the bed to relax and watch some TV. After a bit, something caused me to look back up at the window. I saw something, a red smudge on the glass. I frowned and got up to see what it was. I hadn't noticed any red smudges earlier. I looked closely. It was more like a streak of red in a greasy substance of some sort. Then I noticed more streaks and then more. I gradually began to realize these were letters. My heart began to race as I backed up to take it all in. These streaks of red were spelling out, "Help me." I kind of just collapsed on the bed, my heart still racing. I knew without a doubt in my mind those letters were not there 15 minutes earlier. I just sat there in disbelief for about 5 minutes. Needless to say, there was not much sleep to be had that night. As I left the hotel the next morning, I was disappointed to see that there was no one behind the desk. I really needed to talk to someone. I left a note about the writing and said I'd call them on Monday. When I called, I told the woman who answered who I was, and she said, "Hold on just a moment." She put the housekeeping lady on the phone. I asked, "Did you see it?" She said, "Yes, I saw it." She said, "Just before you arrived, I raised the blinds and turned on the AC. There was no writing. And the strangest thing was when I attempted to clean it off. She said it was like the letters had been engraved into the glass." I said, "I'm freaked out." She said, "I am too. By the way, on the way home, I listened to the tape I had running in the room while I was gone. What I heard was the sound of the closet door angrily slamming several times and some shuffling around. But what really got to me was the sound of a woman sobbing. Third story, the Biltmore Hotel. Me, F-17, and my best friend, F-16, took a trip to the Biltmore Hotel in Florida after watching a Sam and Colby video on it. We obviously couldn't afford the room they stayed in, presidential suite, so we got a known haunted room. We packed away our belongings and began to set up for a seance. We lit candles, introduced ourselves, and then called out to any entity that could be with us, "Hello, spirits. We come in here with full respect and come not to harm, but to investigate. If there is anyone here with us, could you give us a clear sign of your presence?" Around 15 seconds after we heard a knock on the wall opposite us. We passed this as it could have been the people staying in the room next to us, as we were in a well-known hotel. We call out again and ask if that was someone or something try to communicate with us. Following this came 2 knocks from the same wall. Not knowing if this was a coincidence, we brought out a piece of ghost hunting equipment called a spirit box. We connected this to a soundproof pair of headphones, and my best friend put them on. She closed her eyes and relaxed so that we could begin to do the Estes method. She was down under, and I began to ask questions to anything that could be here with us. "Is there anything here with us?" I say. My best friend called out, "It's me." There was no way she could hear my question being asked. I took a leap and asked who is here with us. My best friend then called out "devil" and "malicious." I tapped my friend to stop the session as this spooked me. Into the wardrobe door to the side of us flung open, and a white robe fell off the hanger. 4th story. Haunted hotel story. Help! A few days ago, I stayed at the Montauk Manor in Montauk, New York. I didn't know it was haunted, and my boyfriend didn't know either when he booked the hotel room. We stayed for 2 nights. The first night went fine. We were initially given a room on the 3rd floor, but we had to move because it smelled like an old refrigerator. We were then moved to room 201 on the 2nd floor. This room was much larger than the first one and had an enormous deck with a small gargoyle facing away from the room. The first night passed without any issues. The second night, however, was where things got strange. Around 2 a.m., my boyfriend heard the elevator doors open. He was freaked out because there seemed to be very few people staying at the hotel, and it was an odd time for anyone to be using the elevator. He also noticed a pillow fall from a chair. I told him it was nothing, maybe just a pillow from the bed, and tried to reassure him. I said, "Relax, it's nothing. It's a Friday night. Maybe some people came in late." I brushed it off, but I stayed paranoid through the night and kept the lights on. My boyfriend was also on edge, and we stayed up talking until around 4 a.m. At that point, I told him, "All right, it's past 3 a.m. The spooky stuff is over. Let's go to sleep." I turned off all the lights and fell asleep. About 20 minutes later, I woke up in a complete panic. I called out my boyfriend's name a few times. He was scared too. Then, without thinking, I jumped out of bed and ran out of the room, completely naked. It felt like an automatic response. I didn't stop to think or rationalize. It was very creepy. We decided to pack our things and leave immediately. I asked him if he wanted to stay, but he said no. He was done. I started laughing about the whole thing, which only put him more on edge. He told me to hurry up and pack. When we were leaving, the elevator took forever to arrive, and the man at the front desk laughed at us, making a joke about our early departure. It's been 3 days since the incident, and I'm still on edge. I've had extreme anxiety in the past. My doctor once said I was at a 1920, and this experience has triggered all my symptoms. At night, I feel pressure on my chest and arms like something is in the room with me. I wake up in the middle of the night, waiting for something to happen, but nothing does. I went to church and tried white light meditation, but I still feel unsettled. Is there anything else I can do to feel more at ease? What's the likelihood that I brought a spirit home with me? 5th story. Early checkout at haunted hotel. My mom and I both work at a very old, very haunted hotel. We used to be very open about our hauntings, but our current owner is a real jackass who refuses to acknowledge this, despite the business it could bring in, so we no longer put it in the brochures or broadcast it in any way. But I guess it makes it all the more convincing when guests tell us crazy stories, as they usually have no prior knowledge of the hauntings or even the history of this place, which is a real shame because the building has some serious connections to incredible people who played a major part in founding the country. So a few weeks back, we were in the middle of our January lull. Every year during that month, a lot of us get laid off because we're not needed, so it's pretty quiet around here between the lack of both guests and employees. However, This night we did have two guests check in, both of whom were local, and they were celebrating a special occasion as the guy had flowers delivered to the room before they checked in. They went to the restaurant to eat dinner and then went to their room shortly after 9 p.m. At 10:45 p.m., my mom was startled to see them standing at the front desk with their luggage, looking pale and terrified. They were very reluctant to tell my mom what had happened, but said that they wanted to check out now and not wait until morning. My mom has seen this look on guests' faces before and finally coaxed the truth out of the guy. Apparently, they had went to bed a bit after 10 o'clock, and half an hour later they shot awake to a great crash and the sound of glass breaking. They scrambled out of bed and flipped the light switch on and couldn't believe what they saw. The massive, heavy glass lamp on the bedside table had been knocked off and onto the floor, where it lay in pieces next to the alarm clock, as though someone had just taken their arm and swept the whole lot off in a rage. After seeing this, the couple grabbed their things and bolted out of the room. And when they were checking out, they were so embarrassed that they didn't even want a refund and refused my mom's offer to move them to another room, even though it would have been a huge upgrade. The woman just kept saying, "I just want to sleep in my own bed tonight." And the guy told my mom, "We may come back one day, but never again during the month of January when the hotel is nearly empty." My mom apologized as best she could for the craziness and checked them out, and she gave them a refund anyway, since they had only used the room for a very short while. When they left, she and a coworker immediately went to view the room and found everything was just as they described. While they were marveling at the strangeness of it all, a faint sound nearly scared them to death. It was the woman's cell phone, vibrating under the sheets where she had left it in their frenzy to get out. They grabbed the phone and headed back to the front desk, where they were met by the guy coming to ask if they had found it. With his wife in the car waiting, he decided to open up a bit more to my mom about the incident, as his wife was already terrified and he knew it would make it worse. He said that before they fell asleep, he had felt an undeniable sense of dread, as though something was going to happen. And when the sound first woke him up, he looked toward the foot of the bed and saw the silhouette of his wife standing there. He asked if she was okay and heard her voice answer right next to him. She was still in the bed. We've had people hear voices and music, see apparitions, and capture incredible images on camera, one of which was a young man dressed in colonial-era clothing, and you can see him clearly down his hair and belt. But for someone or something to sweep a lamp and clock off a table so hard it breaks the lamp is very unusual. Our phenomena is very rarely of the physical variety, so I'm not sure what to make of this. I myself have never been frightened of whatever is here, maybe because I'm a history lover and would almost welcome the prospect of seeing someone from such a long-gone era. As to who the woman was that this guy saw at the foot of his bed, I have no idea. We have a very well-known female spirit in the hotel, supposedly from the era when it was a Civil War hospital, but the building also served as an elite college for women and, of course, was a home when it was first built. So it could be anyone for all we know. If my lame old self can figure out how to put a non-obtrusive watermark on that pic of the male colonial spirit, I'm going to post it on here. If it was just some orb or you could maybe interpret that as a face, kind of pic I wouldn't bother, but it really is one of the best ghost pics I've ever seen. Sixth story. I stayed in the most haunted hotel in Chicago. I won't name the hotel just in case, but it is quite literally branded as the most haunted hotel in Chicago, so it wouldn't be hard to find for those who are curious. But I have a story there that took place nearly a decade ago. At the time, I was about 10 years old. My parents decided to take our family, them, me, and my younger brother, who was age 7 at the time, to Chicago for a weekend. My dad has always been interested in the paranormal, which means that I've always been interested too. The entire reason that we booked that specific hotel was because we decided together that it would really cool to go somewhere with such a strong paranormal history. Anyway, so we booked 2 nights in this hotel. We had our room connected, so it was 2 rooms, but they were connected by a door so my parents could get to us. They had one room, me, and my brother had the other. During the first night, I was struggling to sleep and kept tossing and turning. I remember staring out of the window of our hotel room at the lights below and then some movement in the corner of the room caught my eye. I shifted my focus to the other wall and saw a dark figure slowly moving along it. I could hear the footsteps. I immediately assumed it was my dad, because it was the figure of a man. I didn't think it was a ghost at first because it wasn't what little me had assumed it would be. It wasn't transparent, it wasn't wispy, it didn't disappear before my eyes when I looked at it. It looked like someone in the room, a genuine person. I was confused and just stared. It walked around that side of the room, totally black. I whispered to my brother beside me to wake him, but he didn't. And then the figure walked into the corner of the wall that he had seemingly emerged from and was just gone. It was like he walked through the wall. That's when I knew what I had saw. The following morning, my mother was in the bathroom below, drying her hair after a shower, and suddenly yelled at me and my brother to stop tugging on her towel. Me and my brother were in the other room and had never left it. We were playing with the Legos our parents had got us at the Lego store there. We hadn't touched her, but she stopped twice to tell us to quit it, and finally on the third time, she barged out of the bathroom and saw us playing. She looked confused and asked what we had been doing, and I told her that we had been here the entire time. She said that she swore she had seen us in the bathroom, tugging on her towel. She was spooked. Nothing major happened, I suppose, but for child me, it was a pretty scary encounter. Thought you all might enjoy. And if you want to visit that hotel, I would recommend it. It's a beauty. I'm trying to go back soon. Winky face. 7th story. Haunted hotel in Minnesota. About 6 months ago, my girlfriend and I stayed at the St. James Hotel in Red Wing, Minnesota. I had heard stories about it being haunted before and was curious, but was mostly there for the beauty and history of the place. When we got to our room, I did a little Google search to read up on the history and came across a page talking about it being haunted. It said that the 3rd floor was considered the most haunted. We were on the 3rd floor. Then it explained that the 3rd floor had been the residence of the old hotel owner, and room 310 was her room. We were staying in room 310. The article didn't say anything about what she does to the room itself, but it said that she is active in the dining room, moving tables and silverware around. So I didn't know what to expect. The room has those fancy curtains that hang straight down and that you hook up with hooks and loops in the back. They look kind of scalloped when they're up. When we woke up in the morning, some of the hooks and loops had been torn down and broken like someone had pulled on the curtain with some force. Others had been adjusted to be lower than they were originally. We hadn't heard anything during the night, and you need a step stool to reach the curtains in the first place, but that stool was in the same place it was when we checked in. The 2 windows facing the main road were fine, while the other 2 on the side had been messed with. My girlfriend swears up and down that she didn't do it. She's too short anyway. Plus, I'm a light sleeper and would have heard her. And it's probably just a coincidence, but an hour after we checked in, the door to a closet had already swung open. We joked that the lady of the house saw 2 lesbians walk in her room and decided to open a closet for us to go back to where we came from. We were spooked and still had to stay a night after that with our homophobic ghost friend, but nothing else happened. The hotel is beautiful, even if it has a heavy, eerie feeling everywhere. Apparently, there are a lot of other ghosts there besides this one, who we found out is named Clara. Edit, I'm not out here actually thinking a ghost is homophobic because of a silly closet door being opened. Holy cow, people. 8th story. I think the hotel room I'm staying in is haunted. I checked into this hotel room with my family Friday night. It's now very, very early on Sunday. A dream I had woke me up, and since I can't go back to sleep, I'm posting here. I'll start off by saying I'm generally not plagued by nightmares, and I definitely don't have auditory hallucinations. Last night, as well as tonight, laying down to go to sleep, I've been hearing whispers. Thought I was just tired, but now I think it's something more. Yesterday, my mom said I was crying out in my sleep, first night we stayed here. I was having nightmares that night. About half an hour ago, I woke up sobbing, soaked in my own tears. I had just witnessed my daughter's death and attended her funeral in extreme detail. For reference, I do have a daughter. She's 1.5 and asleep, alive, thank goodness, next to me. In my dream, she was murdered by a bomb of some sort that hurt others, but she was first impact. And if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, at her funeral, she was walking around like normal. The funeral itself was weird, as there wasn't many people. And I know for a fact that a lot would come to my daughter's. She was holding the hand of someone, but when she noticed me, she smiled and ran over. I picked her up and smelled the top of her head, as I often do in real life, and was heartbroken to realize she now smelled like embalming fluid. So I took a picture with her to capture one last memory. When I looked at it, I realized I was sitting alone. All that combined really solidified that she was really gone. It's hard to describe. The feelings of hopelessness and despair and gut-wrenching profound sadness that are still lingering. Just want to say here I'm so sorry if you've ever lost a child. I can't imagine your pain, and I'm sending you all the love. I texted my friend about it, and she definitely believes it's haunted. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind until she mentioned it. Edit. Some are interested in what hotel this was. This was Super 8 in Big Timber, Montana. Hope that helps. Also, none of my family experienced any of this, just me. Smiley face. 9th story. Scratches on back at haunted hotel. Things moving next day at home. So long story short, my dad stayed at the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire last weekend and woke up with deep red scratches on his back the next day. There is nothing sharp in the bed to have caused us, and his nails were not long enough for him to have caused it to himself and his sleep. While this creeped him out, it got weirder the next day when he went home, which is not New Hampshire, and was watching my sister, 4 years old, when he heard a noise behind him. He turned around to see one of her toy animals, a penguin, spinning on its head at a high rate of speed. He had enough time to pull his phone out and record a video of it while it was still spinning rapidly. He was looking at my sister, facing and away from it, and nobody else was home. The next day, he put his phone down on the counter and it disappeared. He then found it after looking for 20 minutes upstairs in his bed, where he had not been for hours. He claims he knows he left his phone on the counter. His doctor also had no explanation for the scratches, and he is freaked out that some sort of ghost followed him home. Anybody have any thoughts? Would love to be able to provide a tangible explanation for him. Side note, it won't let me post a video or the picture of the scratches, but if anybody knows how I can, or if anybody wants to see the video of the toy spinning, let me know. 10th story. I took a job at a haunted motel. The guests are not human. I should have known something was wrong the moment I saw the ad. Night clerk wanted. No experience necessary. High pay. Cash only. That last part stood out. Nobody pays in cash anymore, and definitely not at the rate they were offering, 3 times what a normal graveyard shift job would pay. But I was desperate. Rent was overdue, my car was on the verge of breaking down, and my fridge was as empty as my bank account. The motel sat on the outskirts of town, a crumbling relic from the 70s, barely visible from the highway. The neon sign flickered erratically, buzzing like a dying insect. Moonlight Motel, it read, though half the letters were burnt out. Moonlight Motel. It looked abandoned, but as I pulled into the cracked parking lot, I saw a single light glowing from the office window. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of mildew and something else, something metallic like rust or blood. Behind the desk sat a man who looked like he hadn't slept in years. His skin was pale, almost translucent under the flickering fluorescent lights, and his eyes were sunken, shadowed by deep circles. "You here for the job?" His voice was flat, emotionless. I hesitated before nodding. He pushed a set of keys across the desk. "You start tonight." "No interview?" I asked. "Not necessary." I should have walked out right then, but the weight of my empty wallet kept me rooted to the spot. I swallowed my unease. "Any rules?" The man's gaze darkened. His lips barely moved as he spoke. "Never question the guests." A chill crawled down my spine. I wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his expression told me I wouldn't like the answer. Instead, I nodded, took the keys, and stepped behind the counter. The man stood up and grabbed his coat. "I'll be back at dawn. Don't leave the office. Don't talk too much. And whatever you see on the cameras, ignore it." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone in the dim, humming silence of the Moonlight Motel. And that was the beginning of the longest night of my life. At first, the shift was quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was the steady ticking of the old wall clock and the occasional gust of wind rattling the windows. I busied myself organizing the scattered papers on the desk, trying to ignore the peeling wallpaper and the faint smell of something rotten wafting from the vents. The guest log sat open in front of me. I flipped through the pages. Something was off. The names were strange. Some were illegible, written in symbols I didn't recognize. Others were just initials, or single words like Mr. White or Mother. And then there were the dates. The most recent check-in was 3 days ago. No checkouts. Before that, a week, 2 weeks, a month. Pages and pages of guests arriving, but never leaving. A shiver crept up my spine. The bell above the office door jingled, and I nearly jumped out of my chair. A man stood in the doorway. At least I thought it was a man. His face was wrong. Something about the way the shadows fell across, it made it seem like his features were shifting, like his mouth and nose weren't quite where they should be. His suit was too clean, too crisp, like it had just been ironed moments before. He didn't blink. "I need a room," he said. His voice didn't match his lips. There was a lag, like a badly dubbed movie. I forced a smile, pretending not to notice. "Sure. How many nights?" He tilted his head slightly. "Just the one." A lie. I knew that now. I handed him a key, trying not to let my fingers touch his as he took it. His skin was ice cold. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the hallway. His footsteps were off. Too slow, too deliberate. Like he was mimicking how a person should walk, but not quite getting it right. I watched him disappear into the shadows of the motel's dimly lit corridor. I should have ignored the cameras, like the manager said, but I didn't. I turned to the monitor, watching the grainy black and white feed of the hallway outside room 6, where the man had just gone. He stood in front of the door, motionless. Seconds passed, then minutes. He didn't move. Then, all at once, the screen flickered with static, and when the image returned, the man was staring directly into the camera. His face was too close, stretched unnaturally across the screen, as if he knew I was watching. And then, he smiled. Not a normal smile. Not a human smile. It was too wide, stretching from ear to ear, his teeth long and needle-like, gleaming in the flickering light. I slammed the monitor off. I didn't sleep at all that night. And when dawn came, the man was gone, but the key to room 6 was still on the desk. Untouched. The second night felt heavier. I hadn't slept after what I saw on the cameras. Even in daylight, the motel felt wrong. The air was stale, too still, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. When I arrived for my shift, the manager barely acknowledged me. He sat in the office for a few minutes, staring at the wall, before muttering, "You stayed. Good." Then he left, leaving me alone with whatever the hell was lurking in this place. The night started slow. I spent the first few hours flipping through the old guest logs, trying to make sense of the bizarre entries. I found names that had been repeated over and over across different years, decades even. Mr. White, Mother, H. Carter, H. Carter, H. Carter. The same names, the same rooms, but always new dates. The wind howled outside. The walls groaned like they were breathing. Then, around 2 a.m., the noise started. A faint scratching, coming from inside the vents. At first, I tried to ignore it. Rats, I told myself, or maybe just the old pipes settling. But the sound grew louder, more deliberate. It wasn't just random scurrying, it was pacing, a slow, dragging movement, like something was crawling just beneath the surface. I turned up the tiny radio on the desk, tried to drown it out. That's when the phone rang. The motel phone, the one that had been silent all night. I picked it up, hesitant. Front desk. Static. Then a voice, faint, whispering. "Help me." My breath caught in my throat. "Who is this?" Silence. And then thump. The sound came from inside the vent, just above my head. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Dust trickled from the metal grates. Whatever was inside was right there, pressing against the thin barrier. The metal creaked, bending outward slightly, as if something was pushing from the other side. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk and aimed it at the vent. "Who's in there?" No answer. Just breathing. Shallow, ragged breathing. Then, slowly, something moved. A shadow shifted behind the grate. A long, pale hand with fingers too many and too thin slipped through in the gaps. It twitched, stretching unnaturally, grasping at the air. I staggered back. What the hell? Bang! The vent dented outward, as if whatever was inside had thrown itself against it. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I grabbed the office door handle, ready to run, but then, just as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. I stood there, frozen, barely breathing. Minutes passed. The air was thick, oppressive. The vent remained still. And then, the phone rang again. I picked it up with a shaking hand. Static. And then, the voice, closer this time. "Don't look at them." Click. The line went dead. I nearly quit that night. But when dawn came, the manager returned as if nothing had happened. He didn't ask why my hand was shaking. Didn't ask why the vent was dented or why I had unplugged the security cameras. He just dropped an envelope of cash on the desk and said, "See you tonight." And like an idiot, I showed up again. The third night felt worse. The motel seemed darker, the air heavier. The lights flickered more than usual. The neon sign outside buzzed like a dying fly, barely illuminating the lot. And the guests, they were watching me. They didn't talk, not really. They'd come in, ask for a room in voices that barely sounded human, and disappear into the hall. I avoided eye contact, keeping my head down, pretending not to notice the way their faces shifted when they moved. Then, around midnight, she arrived. A woman. She was different from the others. She looked normal. Her face didn't change when I blinked. Her movements were smooth, natural. She had deep, sunken eyes, and her dark hair hung in wet strands over her face, like she had just stepped out of a storm. She leaned in close when she spoke. "Please, I need a room." Her voice was hoarse, desperate. I hesitated. "How many nights?" Her hand clamped over mine. Ice cold. "Just one." The same lie they all told. I gave her the key to room 9. She didn't thank me. Didn't even look at it. She just snatched it from my hand and hurried down the hallway, glancing over her shoulder as if something were following her. I watched her on the cameras. Unlike the others, she didn't just stand in front of her door. She locked it, bolted it, pushed the dresser in front of it. Then she sat on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, eyes glued to the door. I don't know why, but I felt compelled to check on her. Maybe because she seemed scared. Maybe because she seemed real. I grabbed a master key and made my way down the hall. The motel felt suffocating, like the walls were pressing in. Every door I passed felt wrong, like something was breathing on the other side. When I reached room 9, I knocked softly. "Ma'am? Everything okay?" Silence. Then a whisper. "They know I'm here." My stomach twisted. "Boo." She didn't answer. But suddenly, her eyes snapped to something behind me. I turned, and for the first time, I saw one of them. One of the guests. Standing at the end of the hall. Too tall. Too thin. A silhouette darker than the shadows around it. Its head was tilted too far, its face blank. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, featureless skin stretched over bone. It twitched, taking a jerky step forward. The lights flickered, and then another one appeared. And another, stepping out of the rooms, emerging from the darkness, surrounding me. The woman in room 9 grabbed my wrist, yanking me inside just as the lights went out. I didn't fight her. I didn't question it, because for the first time since I started this job, I knew one thing for certain. I was never supposed to leave this motel. The woman's grip was like ice, her nails digging into my skin as she slammed the door shut. "Turn off the light," she hissed. I barely had time to react before she reached past me and twisted the lamp switch. The room plunged into darkness. My pulse pounded in my ears as we stood there, barely breathing. Then the footsteps started. Slow, uneven, right outside the door. I wanted to move, to hide, to do something, but the woman squeezed my wrist tighter, her silent warning clear. Don't. The floorboards creaked. Something was standing outside. The doorknob twitched. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay still. The darkness pressed against me, heavy and suffocating. I could hear it breathing. Or maybe that was the woman. Or maybe it was something else. Then something slid under the door. A shadow, long, stretching across the carpet like fingers curling toward my feet. I felt a cold, unnatural pull like it was trying to drag me closer. My breath hitched as I took a tiny step back, but the second I moved, the shadow snapped toward me. The woman clamped a hand over my mouth before I could scream. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't move. Don't speak. It can't see you unless you let it. The shadow twitched, hesitated, and then it retracted. The footsteps retreated, slow and deliberate. The door creaked as something leaned against it, its weight pressing against the wood. I could feel it there, waiting. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then nothing. It was gone. The woman finally let go of me, and I sucked in a ragged breath. What the hell was that? I whispered. She didn't answer at first. She just walked to the window and peeled back the curtain an inch, peering outside. Then she whispered two words that made my stomach drop. You saw them. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to respond. She turned to face me, her sunken eyes full of something like pity. You shouldn't have come to this place. I didn't have a choice, I muttered. Her expression darkened. None of us did. Something about the way she said that made my skin crawl. I took a shaky breath. What are they? The woman hesitated. They don't have a name. Not one we can say. I shook my head. That doesn't make any sense. She ignored me, stepping closer. How long have you been working here? 3 nights, I said. Her face twisted with something like grief. That's too long. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? She gestured toward the door. Did you notice? The ones who check in. I nodded slowly. They don't leave. Neither do the employees. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I shook my head. No. The manager. He leaves every morning. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Does he? The room felt colder. A horrible thought crept into my mind. The manager was always gone when I arrived, always back before dawn. I thought about the security cameras, the flickering static, the way some guests just stood in front of their doors, unmoving, staring at nothing. The way the motel seemed bigger at night, the hallways stretching longer than they should. What is this place? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, pressing it into my hand. A room key, but not just any key. It was old, rusted, the number worn away. The metal was ice cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. What is this? I asked. Her voice was hollow. The key to the real exit. My blood ran cold. There is no front door, she whispered. Not really. That thing you walk through every night? It just brings you back in. I wanted to deny it, to argue. But deep down, I felt the truth in her words. I gripped the key tighter. And then, the hallway light flickered. The air shifted. The woman went pale. They know, she whispered. They know I told you. A deep, rattling click echoed from the hallway. Like every door was unlocking. And then, the motel came alive. The walls groaned. The ceiling trembled. Shadows leaked from under the door. The air was thick with the sound of something moving, countless bodies shifting, twitching, crawling. The woman grabbed my arm. Run! The door burst open, and I saw all of them. Not just the guests. Not just the manager. Something else. Something that had been waiting for me since the moment I arrived. And then, the lights went out. The lights died. Total darkness swallowed the room, thick and suffocating, pressing against my skin like damp earth. I couldn't see my own hands, couldn't tell if my eyes were open or shut, but I felt them. The guests, standing in the doorway, waiting. A sound crawled through the dark, bones popping, joints twisting, something wet and wrong shifting closer. Then, a whisper right next to my ear. Where do you think you're going? Cold breath slid across my neck. I bolted. The woman grabbed my wrist, yanking me forward as we ran. I couldn't see, but she seemed to know where to go. My feet pounded against the carpet, the motel warping around us. Hallways stretching, doors multiplying, the air thick with the scent of rot and something metallic like blood. The sounds behind us grew louder, faster. The guests were following, moving with that horrible, jerky twitching like broken marionettes, their two long limbs scraping against the walls. "Where are we going?" I gasped. "The stairs," she whispered. We turned a corner, and suddenly, there they were. The stairs to the second floor. Except, there was no second floor. I stopped short. What the hell? I had seen this motel from the outside. It was one story. No stairs. No upper level. But here they were. A long, spiraling staircase, disappearing into the dark above us. "Come on," she hissed, pulling me up the steps. I didn't fight her. As we climbed, the motel shifted around us. The walls grew taller, the air colder. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that moved on their own. A voice slithered through the dark. "You don't belong here." It was everywhere. Behind us. Above us. Inside my own head. Then, a hand shot out from between the steps. Thin. Gray. Fingers too long, clawing at my ankle. I kicked hard. The thing screeched, a high, warbling sound like a skipping record. The woman yanked me up the last few steps, and suddenly, we weren't in the motel anymore. We were somewhere else. The air changed the second we stepped off the stairs. It was wrong. Heavy. We stood in a narrow hallway lined with doors. Hundreds of them. More than the motel could possibly hold. They stretched endlessly in both directions. Each door identical. Wooden, numbered in brass. "This isn't real," I whispered. The woman ignored me, marching forward with quick, purposeful steps. "Stay close. Don't touch the doors." I followed, my heart hammering. The hallway was dead silent except for our footsteps, but I could feel something behind the doors. Watching, listening. Then, as we passed room 209, knuckles rapped against the wood. I froze. The woman grabbed my arm, yanking me forward. "Don't stop." Another door knocked, then another. The sound spread like a wave, growing faster, more frantic, dozens, no, hundreds of fists hammering against the wood. Bang, 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 bang. The hallway shook. The doors rattled in their frames. And then, one swung open. A long, pale arm shot out, fingers grasping, nails splintering as they dug into the floor. The rest of it followed. A thing crawling out on too many limbs, its head lolling, mouth yawning open in a soundless scream. We ran. The hallway stretched, growing longer, the doors warping and pulsing like breathing flesh. The lights flickered wildly, casting grotesque, shifting shadows that didn't match our movements. Something was chasing us. I didn't dare look back. Then, the woman stopped. I skidded to a halt beside her. "What the hell are you doing? Keep moving." She didn't respond. She was staring at a door, different from the others. Black. No number. No handle. "The exit," she breathed. I didn't ask questions. I reached for the key she had given me earlier, shoved it into the lock, and twisted. The door screamed. Not a creak. Not a groan. A full, shrieking wail, as if the wood itself was alive. The air turned ice cold. The motel shuddered, the hallway collapsing inward. And then, the door swung open, and on the other side, there was nothing. A black void stretching endlessly. Cold air pulled at me, dragging me toward it like a gaping mouth ready to swallow me whole. The woman grabbed my wrist. "This is the only way out." I stared into the darkness. My stomach twisted with a primal, gut-wrenching fear. Something waited in that void. Something worse than the guests. The hallway behind us collapsed, doors crumbling into the walls, shadows surging forward like a living thing. We had seconds to decide. Stay in a motel, or step into the unknown. And then, the blackness reached for us. The darkness pulled. Not like gravity, not like wind, this was different. It felt alive, wrapping around my limbs, dragging me forward without touching me. The woman clutched my wrist. "Jump," she hissed. My body refused. My mind screamed a no. Every instinct I had told me that stepping into that void meant never coming back. Behind us, the motel collapsed, walls warping, floors splitting open like something beneath it was trying to crawl out. The guests, if they were ever really guests, were moving toward us in unnatural, twitching jerks, their heads snapping side to side like broken puppets. And then, the manager appeared, not walking, not running. He was just there, right in front of us. His eyes were completely black now, no whites, no pupils. His face shifted like it was made of something liquid. "You were doing so well," he said, voice smooth, empty. "You almost made it." The shadows moved around him, curling at his feet like smoke. I gritted my teeth. What the hell is this place? The woman tightened her grip on my wrist. "Don't listen to him. Jump." The manager tilted his head too far, the skin at his neck stretching like wax. "Where do you think that door leads?" he said, gesturing to the black void. "Do you think it's an exit?" A cold dread settled in my stomach. He smiled. "Too wide. There's no leaving, kid. Not through there. Not through anywhere." I didn't want to believe him, but something deep inside me did. The woman pulled me hard toward the void. "He's lying. If we stay, we become them." I turned back to the manager. His smile had disappeared. The guests surged forward. I had no choice. I jumped, and everything went black. Falling. Not fast. Not slow. Just endless. The darkness wasn't empty. It whispered. Not words, just sounds. Wet clicking, distant voices, laughter that wasn't laughter. I tried to scream. My mouth wouldn't open. The woman was falling beside me, her hair whipping around her face. Her eyes met mine, and I saw fear. Not the kind you get when you're scared of the dark. The kind you get when you realize you've made a mistake. Then, we stopped. Not like landing. There was no impact, no jolt, just suddenly we were somewhere else. I sucked a sharp breath. My lungs burned. My body felt wrong, like I'd been turned inside out and stitched back together. I blinked. Light. Dim. Flickering. The glow of a neon sign. The buzzing was the first thing I recognized. Then, the hum of an old air conditioning unit. The distant sound of a TV playing something unintelligible. I was in a motel office. Not the same one, but almost the same one. The Moonlight Motel sign outside wasn't flickering anymore. It glowed a sickly red, the letters shifting slightly, like they were trying to spell something else. The woman sat beside me, breathing hard. No, 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 no. She stood up suddenly, gripping the counter. We were supposed to get out. I swallowed thickly. Maybe we did. She turned to look at me. Does this look like out to you? I didn't answer, because outside, in the parking lot, there were cars, not abandoned, not rusted, running, idling, full of people, people who looked normal. A man leaned against a truck, smoking a cigarette. A woman adjusted her mirror in a silver sedan. A couple dragged suitcases toward the front door. It looked like a real motel. Like any motel, except for one thing. The manager was still behind the desk. Not the same one. Not exactly. But he looked right at me. And smiled. Like he knew me. Like he had been waiting. A sick realization curdled in my stomach. I turned to the woman. She was staring at the guest log on the counter. Her hands were shaking. I stepped closer, looked over her shoulder, and there they were. Our names, written neatly in black ink. Checked in, but never checked out. The woman stepped back. This isn't real. This isn't real. My head felt light, the air too thick. I turned back to the window, staring at the parking lot. And that's when I saw it. One of the guests. A woman standing near the vending machines. Still. Too still. Not blinking. Not moving. And then, her face shifted. Just for a second. Like something else was underneath it, wearing it. And I realized, none of these people were real. None of them had ever left. And neither would we. I couldn't breathe. The woman clutched my arm so tight it hurt, her nails digging into my skin. She was still staring at the guest log, her breath coming in shallow gasps. We never left. The words hit me like a gut punch. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say something logical, something rational. But I couldn't, because I knew she was right. The parking lot, the guests, the manager. It was all too perfect. The motel looked normal, but I'd already seen what was beneath the surface. And so had she. "We have to go," I whispered. She nodded, snapping out of her daze. We turned toward the door, and he was standing there. The manager, not behind the desk this time, blocking the exit. His black eyes bore into me, and his smile stretched just a little too wide. Leaving so soon, his voice was calm, casual, as if we hadn't just fallen through a nightmare. The woman grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the side door. I didn't hesitate. We ran, through the hall, past the guests, things in human skin, their faces flickering as they turned toward us, their eyes vacant, watching. We burst through the emergency exit and into the parking lot. The cars were gone. The people were gone. The world outside the motel was wrong. The road stretched forever, a perfect, unbroken black highway vanishing into an empty, starless sky. No moon, no streetlights, no sound. I turned in a slow circle, my breath turning to ice in my chest. We were alone. The woman grabbed my shoulders. "There has to be a way out." I nodded because I had to believe it. But then, the neon sign flickered. I turned toward it, my stomach twisting. It no longer said Moonlight Motel. The letters shifted, warping, buzzing, rearranging themselves into something new. A single word. Stay. And then, the front doors swung open, and the guests began to step outside. Slow, jerky, twitching like broken dolls. Their heads twisted unnaturally, their smiles stretching too far. The manager walked out last, hands in his pockets. He looked at us with something close to amusement. "You can run," he said, "but you'll only come back." I swallowed hard. My skin crawled. "What do you mean?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. His smile widened. "You've always been here." The world lurched. The motel blinked, flickering, stretching, glitching like a dying signal. The parking lot melted into the lobby. The sky folded into wallpaper, and suddenly, we were inside again, standing at the front desk. The guest log open. 2 new names written inside. Mine. Hers. Checked in. Never checked out. My head spun. My stomach lurched. I reached for the door again, but it wasn't there anymore. Just hallways. Endless hallways stretching out where the exit should have been. The floor throbbed beneath my feet. The walls warped like breathing flesh. The woman shook her head violently. No, this isn't real." But it was. The manager leaned against the counter, watching us with mild curiosity. "You don't get it, do you?" he said. "There's no out, no escape, no waking up." His black eyes glittered. "This place is a mouth, and it already swallowed you." I backed away. "That's bullshit. If we got in, we can get out." He chuckled. "You never got in." He tapped the guest log. "You've always been here." I felt sick. I turned to the woman. "We're leaving." She nodded quickly. "We're leaving." We took off down the hall, but the motel moved with us. The walls stretched. The lights flickered. The air grew thicker, like we were running through something alive. Doors opened on their own, revealing things that weren't human. Figures standing in the dark, their faces melting, their eyes watching. Then, a room door swung open in front of us. Room 9, our room, the one we had never left. Inside, the TV was on, playing static. The bed was made, and on the pillows were 2 perfect imprints, like someone had been lying there just seconds ago. I froze. My stomach dropped. The woman's breath hitched. "No." She turned to me, her eyes wide and hollow. "We're still in the bed." The words barely left her lips before the walls collapsed inward. The motel shrieked, the floor split open, and I saw something beneath it all. Endless rooms, endless hallways, a never-ending maze of twisting, shifting spaces. The truth hit me all at once. This wasn't a motel. It was a trap, a place that pulled people in, that made them forget, that kept them running forever, searching for a way out that never existed. The guests weren't people. They were the ones who stopped running. And now, we were becoming them. The last thing I heard was the manager's voice. Calm, smooth, final. Welcome home. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.